This is your day-to-day BYU Sports play-by-play. I am Spencer Linton, teamed up with Jerem Jordan. Hope all of you are enjoying your new year thus far. And we have a great gift for you early in 2025. That is another Matich Monday back on BYUSN. ESPN college football insider, analyst, and expert Trevor Matich joins us. Happy New Year, Trevor. What's your New Year's resolution for college football at this juncture?
To keep going on the trajectory it's going with the playoff. I think that the committee and the people, the powers that be, will change a little bit about some of the way the playoff works in terms of seeding and things like that. But other than that, I want them to keep going in this trajectory. Players are being paid, the fans are being served, and I think that it can only get better.
BYU is hoping it can finish as high as humanly possible in the final AP poll that will come out in a couple of weeks. It helps that teams 7 through 15 all lost thanks to a playoff. Do you think BYU has a shot at finishing in the top 10?
There is an outside chance they can do that. Some of those teams that lost in the playoff won't be penalized to the point that they'll drop out behind BYU. But at the same time, there's others who just lost regular bowl games. I mean, you've got Alabama lost, South Carolina lost. And so it depends on what the committee will do with the teams that lost in the playoff. Remember that, or not the committee, but the AP poll voters. Remember that the way the committee handled losers of conference championship games, they made a conscious effort to not penalize them too much in their final ranking. And we'll see what the AP voters do when it comes to teams that lost in the playoff. But that's what will need to happen in order for BYU to rise that high.
Trevor, it feels certainly like BYU will be top 14 at worst, given all the losses in front of them. Regardless, let's say BYU is number 13 or number 14. What does that do to help them and propel them into next season for what they hope is another magical run?
It's another in a stack of things that have lent credibility to BYU's football program recently. I mean, the fact that they were ranked as high as 6, I think, in the committee's ranking, the fact that they finished tied for first place with 3 other teams in the Big 12, and they lost out on the Big 12 championship game by a tiebreaker. And when you talk about the victory over Colorado in the Alamo Bowl, which was huge given the massive audience that tuned into that, and how everybody expected that Colorado would win that game because their starting quarterback, who may be the first quarterback taken in the draft, and the reigning Heisman Trophy winner both played in that game, and it made no difference at all. BYU got the dominant win in front of the nation with no real competition in college football on that night. You put those things together with a higher ranking now from the AP as we head into the offseason, and it tells recruits, high-level recruits, that they need to take a look at BYU. Because before BYU entered the Power Conference, the Big 12, it was difficult to get some of those recruits to even look at the Cougars because they wanted to go to a Power Conference. They wanted to go to a place where they had a chance to make the playoff and possibly win a national championship. You can make the NFL from anywhere, but in the college world, that's where you needed to be. And so the power schools, for the most part. And so the fact that BYU is now a member of that club, the fact that they are performing at a high level in that club, the fact that they now are having kind of a little bit of a snowball when it comes to recruits and transfers that are committing to BYU, guys that are coming from power conferences to commit to BYU. These are things that create that snowball, that create that stacking items that add credibility on top of credibility on top of credibility. And this is why it's important for BYU. People would say that the last ranking in the AP poll doesn't really matter, but it kind of does. Because once again, it's a matter of getting those players that would be a good fit for BYU to actually explore BYU. And the players that are a good fit for this school actually find that there's a lot of reasons to come besides all the things that I just talked about. And when those things are stacked on top, BYU has a formidable recruiting pitch to outstanding players.
We've seen some of those guys already come in the transfer portal, notably Andrew Gentry, offensive lineman from Michigan, and Keanu Tanuvasa from Utah, who is the rare proven Power 4 transfer for BYU. What kind of impact could he have on the D-line next year?
It'll be massive. I mean, as a playmaker, he was a guy at Utah that showed the ability to not just be a plugger, but to get behind the line and create havoc. And at BYU, the way the Cougars play defense, he'll have even more of a chance to do that. I think that, the line of scrimmage was an important target for the transfer portal on both sides. And on the defensive side, not only are they having to replace starters, they're having to replace some of the backups who decided to transfer out. And so having guys like Tanu Vasa come in and be able to not just replace the production, but also create that stout competition in the rotation, that is absolutely huge. And it's not just him. There's other guys that are coming in as well from Utah, from other places that will have the production, that will have the competition. And remember that. I think Tanu Vasa will, I believe, undoubtedly start. He'll have to earn the position, of course, but I believe he will. But when you've got other guys coming in and create competition at those positions, it makes everybody better, not just in the rotation, but it makes the starters better, because they know that if they don't practice as hard as they possibly can and do every small thing right, the guy behind him is pretty good too. And that is how a program is built, competition at each position. And having Tanu Vasa is, I'm glad he chose BYU. By all accounts, he's a great fit for BYU, but he will add so much more to BYU than just the fact that he's a playmaker.
Trevor Matich of ESPN is on BYU Sports Nation. It is another Matich Monday. Along with Tanu Vasa, let's go ahead and throw in Tausili Akana, an edge from Texas that transfers in. Then you have Andrew Gentry on the opposite side on the offensive line. Hunter Clegg, another of those Utah products. We can go on. I mean, the list's getting longer, Trevor, to your point. So what else does BYU need to do in the portal that they haven't already accomplished to get better for 2025?
You never have too many big guys who can run. I would love to see them add even more defensive linemen. I would love to see them add even more offensive linemen. And again, for development, for competition, for attrition, for all these purposes. Keep in mind that the problem that BYU had last year was injuries, not just on the offensive line, but especially on the defensive line and the defensive front. And that's one of the reasons that they struggled down the stretch in 2023. And part of the reason that SMU played for the ACC championship and made the playoff is because of their concerted effort to bring in transfers and high school recruits, but especially transfers on the offensive and defensive line to bulk up, not just the size and the strength and the playmaking ability, but also the depth. Because power conference schedule, as BYU fans know, causes a lot of attrition from time to time. And so I think both lines of scrimmage are important. Having Chase Roberts come back is huge, huge. But you can never have too many little guys who can run on the perimeter. It's got to be the right fit, though. Coach Satake has talked about this a lot, that they want to bring in people that are the right fit for the culture of the program. Ultimately, BYU will have its success, not because they out-athlete people. They can compete athletically, but their greatest potential for the greatest success will always be because of the culture, the kind of player they bring in, how coachable they are, how mature they are, how they stay out of trouble, and how they embrace the boundaries of the honor code and of the nature of being a student athlete at BYU. You can fight it, or you can embrace it and see it as empowering. And that's the kind of player that they want to bring in. Fortunately, there are a lot of guys that want to have their college experience be exactly like that, not just LDS players, but other religions as well. And so to continue to build that culture with guys who fit into the culture and are not wedged into the culture is just massive as they go forward and they continue to recruit at this level.
I told Spencer when we were at BYU, once you embrace the honor code, you're going to have a lot more fun here. And once he did, I thought you had a great time. Did you just call receivers little guys?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can have these 6'4" guys and 6'3" guys like Roberts, but they're still little guys. Bring them in and have them do a 9-on-7 drill, inside run, and then tell me they're not little guys. As a matter of fact, there are coaches around the country that will stop practice of the little guys during 9-on-7. So 7-on-7, the pass drills, things like that, where there are no linemen present, they will take those guys, stop their practice, bring them over for the 9-on-7 drill, which is inside run. So you've got offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, running backs, and then a quarterback to hand it off. And it is a battle in there. I mean, it is fury in there. And they will always tell you, the little guys who come and watch that they leave with a different appreciation for what the big guys do.
Trevor Matich of ESPN is on BYU Sports Nation. Okay, Trevor, one of the bigger storylines in college football, especially over the last week, has been assessing what happened in the college football playoff up to this point. And almost incredibly, none of the top 4 seeds survive. All 4 teams that had a lengthy rest and layoff and bye are now out of it. So, in your opinion, is it a disadvantage to be one of the top 4 seeds in this format, having not played, unlike the other teams who played on December 20th or 21st and then got to play again 10 days later?
It can be. The debate of rest versus rust rages on, but I think in part that happened because they were playing really good teams. While the conference champions all lost, all 5 of them that got an automatic berth, the 4 that had the bye all lost. But the favorites in all those games are undefeated. So the better team, according to who was favored to win, won all of those games. People that can remember back to the early days of the Holiday Bowl when BYU went every year, remember that the Holiday Bowl had a reputation for being the most exciting bowl game. And it was partly because the layoff between the end of the regular season and the bowl, BYU's timing on offense especially kind of left. And it took them about a half to get up to speed. And BYU would often fall behind in that first half. And then they would have a furious comeback. And sometimes they'd win, sometimes they'd lose. But it was always exciting for the fans. And I think we're seeing a little bit of that with that long layoff, that it does affect your timing, at least in the beginning of games.
2 semifinals coming up this week, Trevor. Texas, Ohio State, Penn State versus Notre Dame. Who you got?
I've got Ohio State. We'll start there because they are playing at a level that we haven't seen all season long from anybody. Their defense is playing with a ferocious viciousness that I think is born of the Michigan loss when they lost to their rival on their home field in the last game of the regular season. Michigan planted their flag in the middle of Ohio State Stadium, for goodness sake. And I think that they've been playing angry, just furious because of all the conversation about that and the fact that they lost for the 4th year in a row to their rival. And you can see it in the hits. I mean, when they played Oregon, those Buckeye defenders would come flying up and smash a duck ball carrier, and all you would see was that in the aftermath was like a little puff of green powder. It was just amazing how they hit beyond what anybody else does, motivated to be just angry beyond what everybody else does. You combine that with Ohio State's skill people. Their wide receivers have been unstoppable, and their offensive line has injuries. Their left tackle and center, both all-stars, were hurt. Took them a while to get everything shuffled into where it was working properly, but now that offensive line is playing well. I think Ohio State makes the final. I think they win it all, and I think the team they beat is Penn State. The thing about Penn State against Notre Dame is that they'll use the same defensive strategy that they used to beat Boise State. Ashton Jeanty, the number 2 guy in the Heisman rate this year, the running back for Boise State, they shut him down in that game because they swarmed him, and they decided, Penn State's defense did, that they could live with it if Boise hit some passes down the field. Well, Boise did, but not enough to win the game, and the whole idea for the Nittany Lions was don't let Jeanty beat you. Well, Notre Dame is very committed to the run. As a matter of fact, in their win against Georgia, the only thing that worked in that game for their offense was the quarterback run. Riley Leonard had 80 yards rushing, and the running backs couldn't run. They couldn't throw the ball very well. They won that game not because of offense. They only scored 1 offensive touchdown. They won that game, Notre Dame did, because their defense was magnificent, and they had a kickoff return for a touchdown. So I think Penn State is going to come in with the same philosophy. Swarm the run and live with it if Riley Leonard can hit some passes down the field, which he hasn't done much of. I think Penn State comes out of that one. It's a rematch between the Buckeyes and the Nittany Lions, and I think nothing is going to stop Ohio State.
Trevor Matich, informed and insightful as always. Looking forward to much more of you on ESPN as the playoff football continues this week. Trevor, thanks for the time.
Thanks, guys.